and we need to, especially the moderate Muslims, have to be the first people to defend the rights of cartoonists and novelists and dissidents to criticize the faith and to lampoon the Prophet Muhammad publicly. So if the supporters of this mosque were the kinds of people who would say, we can have a Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest, then they might be precisely the kinds of people who should build a mosque near Ground Zero. I doubt they are, but they might be.
Let me put the point to Reza Aslan. The unique sensitivities that Sam Harris is referring to, cartoons mocking Christ, for example, or Abraham would not be removed from public pop culture consumption, but there seems to be a different kind of sensitivity when it comes to Islam in those examples he cited.
Not here in the United States. That's
just what he was talking about.
In fact, we had.
Wait a minute.
Hang on. Let's establish a factual basis here.
We can talk.
Mr. Aslan, hold on 1 second. Mr. Harris, a few seconds to clarify your point, please.
Yale University Press tried to publish a book, or did in fact publish a book about the cartoon controversy, and wouldn't publish the cartoons. These are utterly benign cartoons.
I am the person who actually edited that book.
Okay, Mr. Aslan?
I am the person who edited the book that Sam is talking about, and I withdrew my endorsement of it because of Yale's decision to remove those cartoons from the book.
So how can you
Look,
say
what's happening in Somalia or in the Sudan or in Gaza or in the Arab world or in these places in which there's this feeling of Western cultural hegemony or oppression, and so they result to violence and they result to lack of tolerance. What does that have to do with the Cordoba Initiative? That's what I want to know. What does anything that Sam has mentioned about Al-Qaeda or about martyrdom or about violence and misogyny in Islam, what does any of this have to do with the Cordoba Initiative?
We have people who try to blow up cars in Times Square.
So my question
communities
to you is,
throughout Western Europe.
What does that have to do with this center?
All right. Can you connect the dots, Mr. Harris?
That's what I'd like to do.
I'd
like you to connect the dots.
Let's ask him to connect the dots.
We have a single system of ideas that goes by the name of Islam that has been articulated for 1,500 years in a literature that is quite static, that can't be readily edited. You can't go into the Quran and cut out verses that you don't like that are not compatible with modernity. And this is a real problem because this is quite a unified, despite all of the variation that Reza says exists, it is quite unified on some rather indelicate points.
But what does that have to do with the Danish cartoons?
I have to respond to that as the Islamic scholar, as the person with a PhD in Islam in this conversation. The idea that Islam represents a unified system of thought for 1,500 years indicates the profound ignorance.
What is the penalty for apostasy in Islam? Just tell us what it is.
The Quran actually has no.
That's true, but you know the Hadith does, and it has it in spades.
And there are 700,000 Hadiths that people decide which they agree on and which they don't. The fact that you're talking about the most diverse, the most eclectic religion in the history of the world, a religion of 1.5 billion people that's understood in thousands of different ways. The fact that you think it's one thing, that it represents one train of thought and one ideology, shows how little you know about it.
All right, Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris?
This literature is static. You can't edit these books. These books are acknowledged by all Muslims to be absolutely sacred, and this is a problem in religion generally. I mean, religion does not respond to revision very well, certainly when it's based on sacred texts.
Gentlemen, we have very little time left. I'd like to ask each of you, starting with Mr. Aslan, to tell me what you think the outcome of this controversy will be about the building of this center.
The outcome is set in stone. This is what's so wonderful about America, is that despite the hue and cry, despite the, very clear religious bigotry that is involved in this conversation, there has never been a single moment of doubt that this building was going to be built. It has gotten unanimous approval from people who actually matter, whose approval actually matters, and it's going to be constructed. And 50 years from now, we'll look back on this with some shame. And I think we'll laugh at the statements of those who thought that this represents a victory for Al-Qaeda.
All right. And Mr. Harris, what do you think is going to be the consequence, the upshot here?
Well, I think it's probably irrelevant what happens with the building. I think what should happen and must happen is that at some point we get to a future where we look back in shame on these kinds of aspersions about bigotry when we're talking about the consequences of ideas and the belief in martyrdom and jihad is a uniquely bad piece of software to be running on your brain at this moment in human history. And that's something we all have to acknowledge. Muslims have to acknowledge it first, and we're all going to suffer until they do.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll have information about your books and your work on the Pat Morrison page. Sam Harris and Reza Aslan, thank you both so much. Your calls can be put to the Pat Morrison page, your comments at kpcc.org.